Hey, welcome to week one of Daring Faith. Man, I cannot tell you how proud I am as your pastor that you are in a small group this week. And for some of you, I know you're like, I've been in small groups for years and years, but I know that there are people in the groups this week this has been a huge, this is your big step of faith. To step into someone's room and say, their house, to show up to a stranger's place, or to sit down and kind of be vulnerable. This is scary for you. You're nervous about it, but I am so glad you're there. And I am so glad to see what God is going to do in your life over the next few weeks. You guys started off the discussion there with just an easy icebreaker question. What's your favorite meal to eat? And I just want to share with you mine. My favorite meal to eat is Mexican food. I love Mexican food. I love any type of Mexican food. Specifically, I love tamales. I love tamales. I got lots of tamales at Christmas time. So if you make tamales, I have to be honest, I need to hold off for a while because I got way too many tamales at Christmas time. I've got to lay off it here a bit. So I'll just stick to some other Mexican food. But that's my favorite going off. And the reason why we started off with a question about food is because we're talking about a miracle that Jesus does today that's all about a meal that he provided for thousands and thousands of people. You see, over the next few weeks, we are starting this campaign. We started this last weekend. You're the first week of small groups. It's about daring faith. It's about a faith journey. And we have lots of different components to this. We have the weekend messages. We have the small group lessons. We have daily podcasts, opportunities for you to just kind of plug in daily, just a little small dose, an encouragement, a lesson about faith. Just kind of whether you listen to it on the way to work, or maybe you listen to it while you're working out or while you're folding laundry. I mean, whenever you listen, it doesn't really matter, but just kind of that daily boost. And my hope, my prayer is that over these 6 weeks, this campaign of faith, that each and every person in our church will make commitments to take steps of faith in 3 areas: in growing, sowing, and going. That in your personal relationship with God, that you will take some daring faith steps to help you take some strides, your next right step in your relationship with God. That you will sow in faith, that you will put some of your financial resources in God's hands to accomplish what he has called us as a church to do over the next 3 years. And finally, that you will take some steps of faith in going. That there are some things, God is giving you some talents, some passions, and I want you to get up out of your seat and I want you to put some of those things into action. I want you to go somewhere, whether it's near or far, and practice those things. Whenever we do this, whenever we put our faith into action, whenever we start making commitments, here's one thing we can expect, is we can expect some miracles. That's just plain and simple. In order to accomplish what God has laid before us, the 2020 vision that we're going to talk about in the weeks ahead, it's going to be a miraculous thing for that to be accomplished. But beyond that big miracle, God is going to do miracles in people's lives. So I want to start off this small group time here, your very first lesson here, talking about one of Jesus' miracles and what he did through this, how it built up the faith of his followers. It's found in Mark chapter 6. And you can either follow along there in your small group study guide, or you can pull out your Bible and read along, and then you'll have a chance to discuss it as a group. So it starts here in Mark chapter 6, verse 30. It says, "The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, 'Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest for a while.' He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat." Now, here's what's interesting here. Jesus is worn out. I mean, if you always think that Jesus never got tired, that's not the case at all. Jesus was God in the flesh. He was 100% God, but he was also 100% human. He had a physical body. Jesus got tired. And life had been so busy. People were always, around him, always pressing against him, always asking for miracles, always asking for his teaching, just always demanding things from Jesus. And Jesus and the disciples, we were tired. It says they were hungry. They hadn't even had time to eat. So they're hungry, they're tired. And Jesus says this. He says, "So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone." Isn't that what we do a lot of times? If you want to go for a quiet place, you hop on a boat. Go on a fishing trip, go on a cruise. You just want to be alone, you want to unplug. That's what Jesus and the disciples did. They go on a trip. They're just going to get away from it all for a little bit, get recharged, re-energized. But here's what happened. It says, "But many people recognized them and saw them leaving. And people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them." And you know how frustrating this might have been? You're getting in the boat, And they decide, hey, we're going to get away from it all. They're going along the Sea of Galilee, just kind of along the shore, and they can see the people chasing along the side. Jesus, where are you going? You don't have to tell us. We'll just follow. Okay. It says when they got to so as many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had complete frustration with them. No, that actually wasn't what it said. But imagine that Jesus, he finally gets to his destination. He steps out of the boat and there's the same crowd. The same people that had been pressing against him, asking for things, they're there. Jesus had every right to be frustrated. He was tired. He was hungry. But despite his personal feelings, the feelings of hunger, feelings of tiredness, it says that Jesus had compassion. He had compassion on them. He had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them. In that moment of personal tiredness, personal weakness, he knew what these people needed more than anything, and he began to teach them. Continuing on, it says this, late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat. So this is a legitimate logistics issue. They're out in the middle of nowhere. You've got all of these people. We'll find out it's 5,000 men, which is like probably 15, 20,000 people counting women and children that are all there. There's nothing to eat. And the disciples are like, hey, we should probably send them away. It's late so they can go get something to eat. In the back of their mind, they're like, and by the way, we're hungry too. Remember, it says Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left on this trip hungry. They haven't had anything to eat all day. They've been working hard, dealing with people. The disciples are hungry. They're tired. They know the people are hungry. Like, let's call it a day, Jesus. But Jesus says this. He says, you feed them. You feed them. The response is obvious. With what? They asked. We'd have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people. Tens of thousands of people. How are we going to feed them? How much bread do you have? He asked. Go and find out. This is Jesus tells the disciples. So they came back and reported, we have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So imagine the disciples thought that at this point, this is the end of the discussion. Jesus, we've taken a large survey. We've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. We know from the other gospel accounts, this was given by a young boy. John included this detail in his gospel. So young boy's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. They bring it to Jesus like, this is what we have. All right, can we call it a day? Can we send him home now? But Jesus, which really shows you where the doubt is in this story. The doubt lands there on the disciples. Like they just kind of see the reality. There's no food. We're hungry. They're hungry. They're not expecting Jesus to perform a miracle. They don't even ask him for a miracle. They're not expecting that Jesus is going to solve this problem. They're going to have to figure it out just kind of normal ways. They're going to have to go to the local McDonald's and get something to eat. That's their solution to it. But Jesus has something else in store. He's going to do the miraculous. And the reason that he's going to do the miraculous is because he needs to build up the faith of his disciples. Now, the other people's faith are going to be built up as well. But it's these disciples that need a lesson here. Then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, as I read through this, I want you to underline some words here. These are kind of some action words that Jesus did as he was performing these miracles. Underline the word took. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He looked up towards heaven and blessed them. Underline the word blessed. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, underline breaking, he kept giving the bread to the disciples, underline giving, so that they could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. 4 action steps there. He took, he blessed, he broke, he gave. And that's what Jesus did with what the disciples offered. They didn't think it was much. They honestly thought it was irrelevant to the situation at hand. There's thousands of people that need food. We got 5 loaves and 2 fish. But Jesus took it, he blessed it, he broke it, and he gave it. Then it says this. So he distributed it to all the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. It says this in verse 42. They all ate as much as they wanted. All. Not just the disciples, but all the people ate as much as they wanted. And afterwards, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers of leftover bread and fish. Now, why 12 baskets? Well, there's 12 disciples. Each disciple got an object lesson in the miracle. Each of the disciples got an object lesson in how much Jesus could provide. As they're carrying this big heavy basket with all these fish and bread in it, tugging it back, they were reminded with every step of that way how heavy it was, how much Jesus had provided in that moment. It says a total of 5,000 men and their families were fed. Jesus took it, he blessed it, he broke it, and he gave it. We see this pattern throughout Scripture when Jesus does the miraculous. You see, it's a step of faith to place something in God's hands. A lot of times, the thing that holds us back from that step of faith is we look at is, this is irrelevant what I have. What I have is nothing compared to the need. What I have will not solve any problem. In this story, we know that this 5 loaves and 2 fish came from this young boy. And I would imagine this boy had no idea what was going to happen to his meal. He probably imagined that Jesus was just going to eat it. He gave it and he's like, yeah, Jesus can have my lunch. Feel free. I mean, if he's hungry, he can have it. He can eat it. He's a good guy. But he did even, in Jesus' hands, it went even further than that. Because Jesus took the natural. He took what was available. He took what was placed in his hands. He took it and he blessed it. He put his power into it. And then he broke it. In the act of breaking, he's multiplying it. He's creating more with it through the brokenness than we can do in the natural. Jesus took it, he blessed it, he broke it, and then he gave it back out. He gave out more than what was given to him. This was the miracle. And this is the miracle God does in our lives all the time. See, when we place things in God's hands, we do the natural. This is what I have. This is what is available to me. And it doesn't seem like it's a lot, and it's not a lot compared to the need out there. But when you place it in God's hands, we do the natural, but God puts his super on it. God does the supernatural. Regardless of how much you have, you might not think heading into this series, like, I don't have a lot to give. You talked about growing and sowing and going. I don't have a lot, but here's the thing. When we place that in God's hands, God does the miraculous. But it takes us putting something in his hands. It takes that step of faith. Whether you know how it's going to turn out or how it's going to, we don't know, but we trust God. In Mark 10:27, this is our memory verse for the week. It says this: Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it's impossible, but not with God. Everything is possible with God. Daring faith. What daring steps of faith are you going to take? In the area of growing in your relationship with God, in the area of sowing your resources into God's kingdom, or in the area of going, put your talents and your time into action. We're going to be building on this for the next 5 weeks. This is week 1. And we're going to get more and more specific over the next 5 weeks about your specific commitments. We're going to turn up the temperature. We're going to turn up the heat. I'm going to ask you guys to make some daring faith commitments. And it's going to be for your benefit. That you are going to see God grow in amazing ways. That God is going to grow you in amazing ways over the next 5 weeks. When you put what you have in God's hands, God will do the miraculous. Because this is so important, because this is the opportunity to be in this group, in these relationships, discussing this, talking about it, you guys are going to talk about this a little bit more, I want to give you another challenge for this week. I would imagine that every single person in the group here right now knows someone that should be in a group this week. You're looking around and you have a friend or a coworker or a relative, a neighbor, and you're like, man, so-and-so needs to be here on this journey. So-and-so has been kind of maybe flat in their faith for a while. They need to take a step of faith. I would encourage you to invite every single person here to invite one guest to come next week. The next week, your small group should be double in size. Everyone invite a guest. And I want you to just jot that person's name down. They're just right there in the margins of your booklet there. Write their name down at the end of small group today. I want to encourage you to pray for those people, that God would give you an opportunity to invite them to come and be part of this Daring Faith series. Everyone has a step to take. Whether you are a seeker, whether you are here kind of checking out church, checking out this group. Maybe you haven't made up your mind about the Bible and Jesus and a relationship with God. You're just kind of checking it out. I am glad that you're here. I am thrilled that you're taking this journey of exploring faith steps. I believe that God is going to do some amazing things in your life. And maybe you've been a Christ follower for decades. God is going to stretch your faith. We all have steps of faith to take, and my prayer for you is that you would take a step in the area of growing, sowing, and going. Have a great discussion today. I can't wait to see you back next week.